In this video I want to talk about what's wrong with this component. This is a traditional op-amp in a triangle form, but in fact, as we remember, if you double click and look at what the PCB footprint looks like, it's got 8 legs. And the first question is, where's the 8 legs? We can't see some of these pins. We can see 2, 3, 1, 5 and so on, but we can't see basically the power pins. And we don't know what they're called. So in other words, using these type of symbols is dangerous because you're not informing the viewer of the circuit how it's connected. But we can find out by doing this thing called signal pins. And when we click on the signal pins, it shows up that these pins 4 and 7, which are missing, they're not on here, they're not visible, but they're actually power pins, and they've got a name -15, +15. So this is quite a dangerous thing to do because you're creating a circuit with invisible information, and that's not what's really recommended. So the way around that is to do this. In other words, this is a symbol. So instead of actually using these symbols with unknown, invisible connections, let's use one with all the connections. So here we've got the same thing again, with 8 pins, but all the pins are visible. There they are, 1 to 8. So however we wire them up, and we can wire them up with the net names like was discussed in the previous video, without any loss of information. And if this was printed, you wouldn't know. If it was on paper, which is quite often a way of sending information around, you wouldn't know where the power pins were and you wouldn't know what was connected. But here, everything can be visible. Okay, so let's say for instance your device wasn't an 8-pin. It was something that you wanted to create yourself. These are called symbols or parts. We need to go to the part editor. Now normally you can do that, and you can go, if you go through the menus, we go up here and there's one called part editor. So we can create our own parts. Then we've got to go to this menu here called edit the graphics. And then again, looking at this menu, we've got another one here called Decal Editing. And yet another one here, which is the important one, called the wizard. Now this wizard is actually the thing that does the creation of a symbol. It only creates rectangles and squares. It allows us to actually create devices with certain number of pins. By selecting the pin counts, we can change it to whatever we want in terms of pins. What I would advise is not to have symbols all the way around like this, because these ones are fine because you can put text on them, but these ones, the text has to be vertical, and it's very difficult to read vertical text. So basically don't have those actually on the top, have them just on the sides. Then you can have as many as you want, and you can create your symbol, which then when you say OK, will create a symbol which allow you to the final thing you have to do is to number the pins. Well, traditionally pins go anti-clockwise like in a U shape, and we do that by set pin number, and the set pin number is defaulted to 1. So then we can say this is number 1, this is number 2, so just incrementing the numbers would then be, it doesn't technically matter where the numbers are because it's only a symbol. This could be round with bicycle spokes, it wouldn't matter as long as the pin numbers refer to the connection, the net name that you're trying to create. Okay, so that's how you create your own schematic part, but in fact it's quite often not necessary. What you can do is that. So here's equivalent of our 5-pin connector. In other words, it's not standard. You won't see a 5-pin rectangle with those on, but you might have a transistor or something like that with 5 legs. These are done with add part. make sure that the libraries are all selected, and then put in CON for connector. And looking down the huge list, you'll start to see ones with common names like 10P. That's a 10 pin, 19 pin, and so on. You can quite often find all numbers that you, in small numbers that you want. And so that's when you add them, you get these things, which is pin 1, pin 4, pin 5, pin 1, 2 and 3. And you can move these around individually or as a combined symbol. So don't worry about creating messy parts. You can actually find them. You still have to go through the business that if you click on this, your chip doesn't look like that. So in a previous video we showed you how to edit the actual footprint. But to actually get them to do it on within the pad's logic, then that's quite often just as good. So what I want to talk about now is doing the same thing in pad's layout. So if we have just a blank screen on pad's layout, which I've gone too far, then the first thing we do, again, these are called, if we go to Tools, Pcb Decal Editor. It's a really strange combination of words, but this is basically how to edit the symbols. We've then got to go through to this menu where it says Drafting Tool, and then again we've got a magic wizard. So clicking on that one gives us a much more comprehensive wizard, allowing us to either do these dual inline components, we can do quads, we can do circular, and we can have them as either through holes or surface mount leads. So all the parameters are shown and they're all adjustable. So you have to refer to the data sheet for the precise data. Once you've got this screen, you can select the various types of components, either these quad ones where those leads all the way around, or even more old-fashioned circular ones. If you go back to the dual ones, then you can specify the number of pins. So if you want 10 pins, then it generates a 10 pin. All these spacings are shown in the diagram down here, and it mentions the P and the W, which are referred to like P for pitch and W for width and so on. So from the commercial data sheet of the device that you're planning to use, you can push in the numbers, and then once you're ready, you click on it, and then it generates your symbol to do that. Quite often, if there's a problem that you can't quite do it, you can still edit these. You can still create with select anything. You can still move these things around. And so if you want to adjust the spacing, you can manually. So in summing up, we can create our own footprints on the PCB. So as an example, this one shows a custom footprint that we created using the wizard that we were just using, showing a 6-pin connector. In fact, it's actually a jack plug for an audio codec. Okay, and this is another one that's customized that may not be in the library. So just because it's not in the library doesn't mean to say that you can't create your own.